The fate of the war in Gaza hangs in the balance. Without an agreement by Hamas for the release of additional hostages in the coming days, Israeli leaders signal a willingness to return to war. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The messages from both Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister Katz are coming through loud and clear. Free the hostages now or face war. Netanyahu warned Hamas to return the hostages now or face consequences you cannot imagine. The Prime Minister vowed that Israel will not stop until victory is achieved. Speaking at a special Knesset session to consider the creation of a state commission of inquiry into the failures of October 7th, the Prime Minister said Israel is preparing for the next stages of what he called the War of Revival. We will not stop until we achieve all the goals of victory, Netanyahu said. He also pledged to return all of the hostages. Hamas said it will not bow to U.S. or Israeli pressure and will only negotiate Phase 2 of the agreement for an end to the war.
إن الاحتلال بسلوكه هذا يدفع لإعادة الأمور إلى نقطة الصفر والانقلاب على الاتفاق من خلال ما يطرحه من بدائل مثل تمديد المرحلة الأولى أو عمل مرحلة وسيطة وغيرها من المقترحات التي لا تتوافق مع ما جاء في الاتفاق الموقع بين الأطراف.
Following the latest Hamas rejection, Defense Minister Katz started a countdown, warning Hamas that if hostages are not freed in the coming days, the gates of hell will open. Katz said that despite recurring Hamas violations and its rejection of the U.S. plan for a ceasefire extension, Israel decided to allow for a few more days of negotiations before a return to the battlefield. Katz said, "We will return to fighting, and Hamas will face the IDF with strength and methods that it has not seen until now. Hamas must be totally defeated and will not be allowed to rule in Gaza."
And 7 Israeli former hostages have arrived in Washington, D.C., hoping to push for the release of those still held captive in Gaza. Their visit comes as Israel warns that if negotiations fail, fighting could resume within days. More from ILTV's executive editor, Maayan Hoffman.
7 Israeli hostages have arrived in Washington, D.C., where they are expected to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump, though the timing of the meeting remains unclear. Shir Siegel, daughter of former American-Israeli hostage Keith Siegel, told Khan News that her father decided to fly to Washington just weeks after his release because he believes the U.S. plays as significant a role in hostage negotiations as Israel. She said he feels a personal obligation to do everything possible to help bring the remaining hostages home. Also in Washington on the same mission is former hostage Eli Sharabi, who received a personal apology from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ahead of his visit. According to the Prime Minister's office, Sharabi said he would urge Trump to push for the hostages' release, emphasizing that U.S. support is critical to bringing them home. As the hostages traveled to Washington, hostage families back home issued an urgent appeal to Trump, calling for immediate negotiations to secure the release of all remaining captives in a single phase. Eli David, brother of Evyatar David, who appeared in a Hamas propaganda video last week, urged Trump to act. "Families have been reunited because of your leadership," he said. "Now we need you to finish this." He called for a deal without stages or delays. The former hostage's visit coincides with Trump's first address to a joint session of Congress in his second term. Fox News Digital reported that his speech, expected to take place around 7 p.m. Eastern tonight, will include plans for global peace and efforts to secure all hostages' release. Meanwhile, Israeli officials warned that if no agreement is reached, fighting in Gaza would resume within 10 days. In a closed-door meeting with Jewish Agency Board of Governors, Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer reportedly said that the war with Hamas is the only viable option. According to a report by Ynet, Dermer suggested that Hamas's total defeat could open the door to a future peace agreement with the Palestinians. He was quoted as saying that eliminating Hamas would allow for a shift in Palestinian education, removing the, quote, poison of extremism. However, his office later denied making these remarks. Although diplomatic efforts have stalled, U.S. envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff is expected to visit the region, a State Department spokesman told Reuters, contradicting earlier reports that Witkoff would only travel to the region once a breakthrough was imminent.
And joining us now with more on a potential return to the war in Gaza is Dr. Harel Chorev, a senior researcher at the Moshe Dayan Center at Tel Aviv University. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Israeli leaders say return the hostages now or the war will renew and the gates of hell will open. You know, that's a pretty clear message. Is that the direction we're heading in?
Well, it might be. I think Israel is trying to improve the conditions of such a deal. At the moment, it's quite rigid on behalf of Hamas. And I think Israel is creating a lot of pressure, not only within Hamas, but also among the Arab countries. And this is the reason why we see an unmatured decision that will probably be held tomorrow by the Arab countries to create this two forces that are working together in a pinset move to put pressure on Hamas. And this is basically what Israel is claiming at the moment. We want different deal, and if we want get better conditions, we will go to war. I'm not sure it's behind the door, but at the moment, this is exactly what we are projecting to Hamas.
Mm-hmm. And so Israel says the gates of hell will open on Hamas in Gaza. What kind of military operation then would we be talking about?
Well, we just heard 2-3 days ago that Secretary of State Marco Rubio approved an additional $4 billion in ammunition to Israel, which adds up to $12 billion just from the beginning of the Trump administration. This is something that signals a real force backing by the U.S. To Israel, and that the war will not be held in a moderate manner like we saw in the past year under the Biden administration. It would be much more aggressive, less infantry on the ground and more fire from the air. And I think this is exactly the message that they're trying to send to Hamas, that it won't look as it looked by the end of the first phase of the war. And I think not only you see, we didn't attack basically 30% out of the Gaza Strip. The reason is very simple. We have hostages there, and Israel avoided from attacking those 30%, mainly in the central camps and central Gaza, because of this reason. I think that if Israel will go again into war with full force, we will see something throughout the Gaza Strip, including in those areas.
Mm-hmm. And you know, Israel is already blocking the humanitarian aid into Gaza, and we know that Israel, though, has made certain concessions as part of this ceasefire deal. Do you expect that the ground forces would move quickly to sort of return to pre-ceasefire positions inside Gaza? You mentioned that it would be more likely attacks from the air, but would we likely see another sort of wide-scale ground invasion as well?
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of the things that Israel might do. First and foremost, to offset all the achievements, the military achievements of Hamas in the first phase. And first, I would think about the Netzarim corridor that was evacuated. Israel can take it back within hours, and this is something that we knew even before we draw, and it's totally achievable. And all of that is really to project to Hamas that it needs to ease its conditions. I would also give an attention to what Egypt offered just 2 days ago. I think the Arabs are under a lot of pressure. On the one hand, the Trump plan to exile the Palestinians to Jordan and Egypt. So they want to find a solution of their own, an alternative. And on the other hand, Israel that is pushing forward to attack the Gaza Strip. And therefore, what we get is those two things that we just saw in the past 2 days. One is an Egyptian offer to postpone the ceasefire or to extend the ceasefire in another 2 weeks, and to get 3 hostages, live hostages back, and 3 dead hostages, unfortunately, back, and to postpone it in 2 weeks. They want to earn time in order to try to find a solution, first and foremost within the Arab countries, because as we said, their decision at the moment is far from being matured and I would say clusterized and coherent.
All right, well, certainly fateful days ahead of us. Dr. Harel Chorev, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
For generations, owning a home in Eretz Yisrael has been a cherished dream, one of faith, heritage, and belonging. Now, with Sparta Real Estate, that dream is within reach. From the spiritual heart of Jerusalem to the vibrant Jewish life of Vernana, the seaside beauty of Netanya, or the energy of Tel Aviv, Eliyahu Kleinman will guide you every step of the way. With beautiful homes at various price points and all bureaucracy handled for you, it's never been easier. Scan the QR code now, and Eliyahu will personally help you find your home in Israel.
And the Egyptian vision for post-war Gaza is being presented today at the Arab League Summit in Cairo as a counter-proposal to the Trump plan for Gaza. Details of the Arab plan have emerged, signaling no role for Hamas. ILTV's Steve Leibovitz reports.
The Egyptian plan was created as a counter-proposal to U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza plan that envisioned the removal of the population and the enclave's ownership by the U.S. The Egyptian plan has yet to be published, but it does reportedly sideline Hamas and replace it with Arab, Muslim, and Western states. Hamas has so far rejected the notion of any proposal being imposed on the Palestinians. Cairo's plan reportedly does not tackle the issue of who would pay for Gaza's reconstruction and is short on details of how Gaza would be governed, or how an armed group like Hamas would be dealt with. But emerging details say a so-called governance assistance mission would replace the Hamas-run government in Gaza and would be responsible for humanitarian aid and reconstruction of the enclave. The preamble of the proposal notes there will be no major international funding for the reconstruction of Gaza if Hamas remains the dominant armed political element on the ground, controlling local governance. The plan does not specify who would run the government's mission. Instead, it says it will draw on the expertise of Palestinians in Gaza and elsewhere to help Gaza recover as quickly as possible. The proposal envisions an international stabilization force that would be made up of Arab forces that would provide security and the eventual creation of a new local police force. The force would be run by a board comprised of Arab and Muslim countries, the U.S., Britain, the EU, and others. The plan does not detail a central governing role for the Palestinian Authority. The cost for rebuilding Gaza is estimated by the UN to be more than $53 billion. Gulf and Arab states will reportedly be asked to contribute at least $20 billion to the initial phase of reconstruction.
And now in other news, last week ILTV attended the Innovation on the Bar event hosted at the Abrams Lounge in Tel Aviv, where two prominent tech leaders held panel discussions on Israel's future and the tech sector. Let's take a look.
Two of Israel's most prominent leaders in tech joined forces for a promising night of inspiration at the Innovation on the Bar event, showcasing the eclectic bar at the Abraham's Lounge in Tel Aviv and in partnership with Israel Innovation Authority. Both Nir Zug, founder and CTO of Palo Alto Networks, and Dror Bin, CEO of the Israel Innovation Authority, led a panel discussion called Israeli High Tech is Shaping Tomorrow, Technology as a Force that Changes Reality. With their talent and experience in the tech world, they discussed why Israel has become a central point around the globe for innovation and startups.
The talent is what makes Israel so special. When you meet with entrepreneurs, people that have ideas about new tech ventures, you just see the spark in their eyes. And if you tell them it's impossible to do, then you just motivate them even further. And I think that along the 5 last decades, many amazing tech companies started out here in Israel as startups and then grew to the global markets. And especially this year, a year of war, 2024, we maybe against all odds, we saw even more vibrant ecosystem of more people seeing new needs and wanting to bring technological solutions to those needs.
More than 300 people filled the room at the Abraham to hear the panel about the booming ecosystem of innovation in Israel and to understand what is needed to keep the level of high effectiveness for startups, according to experts.
A lot of enterprise-related innovation came out of Israel. Traditionally, Israel has been known for creating very innovative technology, but struggling to make it into products. What we've seen in recent years is the ability of Israeli companies to not just innovate and create innovative technologies, but also taking them, productizing them, selling the product, and scaling the company to relatively high levels. There is a proven opportunity here to build companies worth billions of dollars that are fully developed into selling products around the world.
Both Bin and Zug discussed the future of high tech in Israel and how they can reach levels of success.
We now see a potential very strong wave of deeper technologies, just to mention artificial intelligence, quantum computing, but many other sectors which involve not just only software, but also tangible products to solve the great problems of humanity. Talk about energy and climate change and health and transportation. Israelis are known for knowing better than everyone else. And it's been very common for Israeli startups to always assume that they know better than customers, what the customers need. And that almost always turns out to be true. And this is really the role of product management. The more Israeli companies will be product management driven versus engineering driven, the better they will be and the more successful they will be.
Tune in for their next events in March.
And thousands upon thousands of northern residents were forced to leave their homes due to rising tensions with Hezbollah since October 7th. However, with the ceasefire in place, they are finally able to return home.
After months of displacement due to Hezbollah rocket attacks, residents of Kibbutz Yiftach near Israel's northern border are finally returning home. The moment marks a significant step in the region's recovery following a ceasefire agreement between Israel and the Iran-backed terror group. Families from Kibbutz Yiftach made their way home in a celebratory convoy, a moment of relief and joy after months of uncertainty.
And today is a very exciting day in which we're returning home. We're returning home all together. We feel safe enough. Everything is open, the children's houses, our houses are clean, our gardens are clean, thanks to many, many, many volunteers and wonderful people. And we made a huge parade of cars from Ginosar up to here, Ginosar where we stayed, and that's it, we're home.
The return follows months of relentless Hezbollah rocket and UAV attacks, which forced some 60,000 Israelis to evacuate. The violence erupted after Hamas's October 7th massacre, leading to an escalation along Israel's northern border.
יום היסטורי. התושבים חזרו מיישובים שונים בעמק הירדן הביתה, וכולם מאושרים והרגשה נהדרת והיום נפלא, והשמיים מחייכים, והכל נראה מושלם.
The ceasefire agreement, implemented in late November, has held despite ongoing tensions. For now, the sounds of rockets have been replaced with laughter as families work to rebuild their lives in their rightful homes. For residents of Israel's northern border, today marks not just a homecoming, but a step toward normalcy. The situation along the northern border remains fragile, but for now, the residents of Kibbutz Yiftach are embracing the peace they fought so hard to return to.
And now some cool news coming from the world of sports. Israeli basketball player Deni Avdia is the 6th Israeli to make it to the NBA, but the first to achieve a career triple-double. More on these statistics from ILTV's Devo Klein.
So Deni Avdia.
Deni Avdia was the 9th overall pick when he was drafted to the Washington Wizards in 2020. Following only 5 Israeli players to ever make it to the NBA, Avdia is quickly standing out. Now a player on the Portland Trail Blazers, Avdia is making headlines with his aggressive style and is recently becoming the first Israeli with a career triple-double. A triple-double is a term used in basketball when a player accumulates double digits in 3 statistical categories in a single game, the categories being points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. Each stat represents a pillar of their contribution to the team's success, highlighting their ability to dominate both offensively and defensively. In the game last night against the Cleveland Cavaliers, Avdia scored 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. This remarkable feat showcases Avdia's versatility and impact in his recent game. After losing the game against the Cavaliers, Avdia said this.
First triple-double in your career, coming off of an injury as well. Just your thoughts. I mean, I'm sure you would have liked to get into a win, but a really great performance.
It's hard for me to think about the triple-double right now because I wanted to win. And I wanted that 3 to go in and wanted us to win, especially versus the first seed in the East. I don't think about it right now, but maybe tomorrow it'll be make me smile a little bit. But I worked hard.
Deni Avdia is well on his way to being the most successful Israeli basketball player in history.
The offensive rebounds. Avdia for 3. Got it again.
Beautiful.
The rebound, he's going to push. Avdia, will he get it off in time? He does, and he puts it in. It's the mensch off the bench on Hanukkah.
Shalom. One-legged runner. I love it.
And good news for Israeli snow lovers. The Mount Hermon ski resort today reopened to the public for the first time since the start of the war. After a break of nearly a year and a half due to the war in the north, the site has been closed to visitors. The reopening has now received official IDF approval after 18 months as a closed military zone. Since the start of the war, the IDF Mountain Brigade patrolled the area. And in recent days, it was determined that security conditions were achieved that now allow visitors to reach the Mount Hermon site. For now, the site will be limited to visitors only with no skiing due to significant war damages to infrastructure, including direct hits on 2 ski lifts. Repair efforts are still underway, but visitors will have access to a cable car ride, an extreme sledding attraction, and children's snow sledding. And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Partly cloudy skies are expected around most of the country tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of around 12 degrees Celsius or 53 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see more cloudy skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of 18 degrees Celsius or 66 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, ILTV.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gavelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.